In A Song of Ice and Fire, Hardhome is a location steeped in ancient mystery. In Game of Thrones, it was a fishing village where the wildlings who fled Stannis Baratheon escaped to before being descended upon by the White Walkers. It was a perfect setup for Jon Snow's ultimate purpose in ending the Long Night, and with Jon's final stare-off with the Night King, fans were certain that their conflict would end in a legendary duel for the Dawn.
Oh, brother, this stinks!
But in the Game of Thrones books, Hardhome is different. It's no longer a fishing village, but instead a ruin, having been destroyed by some unknown disaster 600 years before the story begins. Now, it is an unholy place, cursed. So what happened at Hardhome? Did a rogue Dragonlord of Valyria unleash Dragonflame there? Was it a premeditated practice run for the Doom of Valyria? Or was it some astronomical or geothermal event that brought upon this destruction? Hardhome lies at the tip of Storald's Point, on the coast of the Shivering Sea, where some wildlings worship a crab god. Hardhome was the perfect location for a burgeoning town north of the Wall. It's protected by a great cliff with intricate cave systems on one side, and sits on a bay with water deep enough to harbor large ships. It's a short journey from Hardhome to Eastwatch by the Sea, a castle of the Night's Watch, where ships from Essos visit to trade with the Watch and even some wildlings. There could have existed a real economy and self-sustaining town at Hardhome. Wood and stone were plentiful, the waters teemed with fish, and there were even populations of seals. Hardhome had been halfway toward becoming a town, the only true town north of the Wall, until the night 600 years ago when hell had swallowed it. After the Doom of Hardhome, the free folk never again inhabited the land, and rangers of the Night's Watch reported that the overgrown ruin had been overtaken by ghouls and demons and burning ghosts with a taste for blood. Corlys Velaryon, on one of his 9 famous voyages, sailed his ship, the Ice Wolf, to Braavos, Eastwatch by the Sea, and even made a stop at Hardhome, but we aren't told what he saw there. After King Stannis Baratheon defeated the wildlings beneath the Wall, several thousand of them were able to escape. They began following a witch named Mother Mole, who led them to Hardhome. Mother Mole claims to have had a vision of a fleet of ships arriving to carry the free folk to safety across a narrow sea. These ships would presumably arrive in the vast harbor of Hardhome, which is why thousands of men, women, and children followed her there. Mother Mole also preached that the wildlings would find salvation where they once found damnation, that they would be rescued from the dark forces of the north at Hardhome to make up for the doom that killed all the wildlings there 600 years prior. Lord Commander Jon Snow believes this to be ill-fated. He says that Cotter Pike, who commands Eastwatch by the Sea, sailed past Hardhome from time to time. He tells me there is no shelter there but the caves, the Screaming Caves, his men call them. Mother Mole and those who followed her will perish there, of cold and starvation. Hundreds of them, thousands. Bowen Marsh says, thousands of enemies, thousands of wildlings. Thousands of people, Jon thought. Men, women, children. Anger rose inside him, but when he spoke, his voice was quiet and cold. Are you so blind, or is it that you do not wish to see? What do you think will happen when all these enemies are dead? Jon understands that they will become thousands of fresh whites in the army of the dead. He says, the dead will rise again, in their hundreds and their thousands. They will rise as whites, with black hands and pale blue eyes, and they will come for us. So Jon makes the decision to send Cotter Pike with 11 ships to rescue the wildlings and bring them safely back to the Wall. Jon doesn't lead the mission to Hardhome himself, like he does in the TV series. He is dealing with tense matters at Castle Black, but he receives correspondence with Cotter Pike, who tells him the seas have grown very rough by Eastwatch. A few chapters later, Pike sends another letter, saying, at Hardhome, with 6 ships, wild seas, very bad here. Wildlings eating their own dead, dead things in the woods. 6 crew dead, many wildlings. 8 ravens left, dead things in the water. Send help by land, seas racked by storms. After reading Pike's letter, Jon reflects to himself. Dead things in the wood, dead things in the water. 6 ships left of the 11 that set sail. Night falls, and now my war begins. So Jon plans to lead a rescue mission on land, starting at Eastwatch and marching north, where the woods are thinner. Jon gathers all the wildlings in the Shield Hall of Castle Black to make plans for the relief of Hardhome. We must send what help we can by land, or let them die. I had hoped to lead the ranging myself, and bring back as many of the free folk as could survive the journey. But now I find I cannot go to Hardhome. The ranging will be led by Tormund Giantsbane. You see, before Jon has this meeting with the wildlings, he just received Ramsay Bolton's pink letter. Borak asks, "And where will you be, Crow? Hiding here in Castle Black with your white dog?" "No, I ride south," Jon says. "It is not for us to oppose the bastard of Bolton, but this creature who makes cloaks from the skins of women has sworn to cut out my heart, and I mean to make him answer for those words. The Night's Watch will make for Hardhome. I ride to Winterfell alone, unless, is there any man here who would come stand with me?" The Shield Hall erupted in support of Jon. All of a sudden, One the Giant roars across the yard of Castle Black, and Jon finds that the giant had killed Sir Patrick. Jon commands everyone to put their swords away, so as to not frighten the giant. But before he could finish his sentence, Bowen Marsh and his men had slit Jon's throat, and stabbed him in the gut and between the shoulders. Jon never felt the fourth knife, only the cold. So the rescue mission to Hardhome ends with Jon's change of plans to face Ramsay Bolton, and his assassination. As things currently stand, when the Winds of Winter will begin, the wildlings are stranded at Hardhome with no food, with dead things all around them. 600 years before the books begin, Hardhome became a ruin. Hardhome had been halfway toward becoming a town, the only true town north of the Wall, until the night 600 years ago when hell had swallowed it. Its people had been carried off into slavery or slaughtered for meat, depending on which version of the tale you believed. Their homes and halls consumed in a conflagration that burned so hot that watchers on the wall far to the south had thought the sun was rising in the north. Afterward, ashes rained down on the haunted forest and shivering sea alike for almost half a year. Traders reported finding only nightmarish devastation where Hardhome had stood, a landscape of charred trees and burned bones, waters choked with swollen corpses, blood-chilling shrieks echoing from the cave mouths that pocked the great cliff that loomed above the settlement. This sounds an awful lot like the Doom of Valyria. In Valyria, it was written that on the day of doom, every hill for 500 miles had split asunder to fill the air with ash and smoke and fire. Blazes so hot and hungry that even the dragons in the sky were engulfed and consumed. Great rents had opened in the earth, swallowing palaces, temples, entire towns. Lakes boiled or turned to acid, mountains burst. Fiery mountains spewed molten rock 1,000 feet into the air. Red clouds rained down dragonglass and the black blood of demons. And to the north, the ground splintered and collapsed and fell in on itself, and an angry sea came rushing in. Both the Doom of Valyria and the Doom of Hardhome are said to have had ash falling from the sky in a fiery disaster that left the landscape devastated, with demons left to inhabit the aftermath. One theory suggests that the Faceless Men of Braavos used Hardhome as a practice run for their Doom of Valyria 200 years later. Of course, for this to be true, the theory that the Faceless Men caused the Doom of Valyria must also be true. The Faceless Men claim to have originated as slaves who toiled in the volcanic mines of Valyria. One day, the first Faceless Man chose the most wretched of the slaves, the one who had prayed most earnestly for release, and freed him from his bondage. The Faceless Man believed every god they prayed to was simply one of 100 faces of the one true god, the many-faced god. He believed he was God's instrument, so he made that first gift to him. These former slaves of Valyria escaped to the north and founded the free city of Braavos, where the Faceless Men would begin their operation. As former slaves and escaped assassins, the Faceless Men may have begun to plot their revenge against Valyria and their former slave masters. Hardhome is relatively close in proximity to Braavos, and may have seemed like a small and inconsequential location to do a bit of practice destruction. But how? The Doom of Valyria is theorized to be caused by the constant assassinations of the blood mages who kept the 14 Flames volcano system under control. Once those mages were killed, the 14 Flames supervolcano erupted, causing a natural disaster due to the lack of magical prevention by the mages. The Faceless Men could have certainly assassinated those blood mages. That's very on brand for them. But how could they have replicated this at Hardhome, a place with no known volcano system or mages? Even if there was a volcano on Hardhome, there is no evidence the Faceless Men had the magical ability to make it erupt on command. Also, why would the Faceless Men leave a 200-year gap between the Doom of Hardhome and the Doom of Valyria? 200 years is an early practice run. This theory doesn't really work. Ultimately, the Faceless Men probably caused the Doom of Valyria, but had nothing to do with Hardhome. Hardhome does have a cave system, called the Screaming Caves by Brothers of the Night's Watch, for the awful, blood-chilling screams that could be heard within. Hardhome was consumed by a fire disaster that was visible from the top of the wall, and the land was covered by raining ash for half a year. This suggests the possibility of geothermal activity in those screaming caves beneath Hardhome. If this theory is true, was this geothermal event natural, or triggered by an interference from an outside force? Well, the most fearsome outside force alive at this time was a dragon. The Valyrian Freehold was home to over 40 rivaling houses of Dragonlords. That suggests the existence of dozens, if not hundreds, of dragons. The free city of Braavos remained undiscovered by the Valyrian Freehold for a century after they were established, meaning the Valyrians eventually did find out where their escaped slaves ran off to. Perhaps a Dragonlord, or several, made an expedition to burn this new sovereign city of Braavos, but miscalculated their journey. Perhaps the arrogant Dragonlord found the small village of Hardhome to the northwest and mistook it for Braavos. If this Dragonlord unleashed their dragon's flame on Hardhome, that would certainly be enough to burn the landscape and all its inhabitants. But for this destruction to be visible from the top of the wall, and to have ash rain from the sky for half a year, perhaps the dragon flame activated the geothermal activity in the caves beneath Hardhome, causing a simultaneous volcanic eruption. More on that later in the video. There is a point against the rogue Dragonlord theory, besides how unlikely of a miscalculation it would be. In the year 58 AC, during the reign of King Jaehaerys, Queen Alysanne flew her dragon Silverwing to the wall on her visit to the north. She tried 3 times to fly Silverwing past the wall, and each time, the dragon disobeyed her and turned back south. In a letter to King Jaehaerys, Alysanne wrote that never before has she refused to take me where I wish to go. I laughed about it when I came down again, so the Black Brothers would not realize anything was amiss. But it troubled me then, and it troubles me still. It remains a mystery what could cause a dragon to be scared of flying north of the wall, and no other dragon has flown there since, so we don't know if it was just a Silverwing problem, or if there is some magical element of the cold that deters a dragon and its fire magic. So, if a Valyrian Dragonlord did try to fly to Hardhome, thinking it was Braavos, it's possible their dragon wouldn't even allow them to do so. Also, if a Valyrian did go too far to the north and missed Braavos, you'd think they'd have found the Grey Cliffs of the North or the island of Skagos before getting all the way to Hardhome. A more grounded and logical explanation is a fleet of slavers from across the Narrow Sea who may have discovered this small fishing village at Hardhome and captured all its residents to be sold into slavery in the east. This isn't too hard to believe, especially since this exact thing happened in Book 5. Before Cotter Pike and his rescue fleet could reach Hardhome, pirates in ships called the Goodheart and the Elephant stopped at Hardhome to make repairs. The wildlings pleaded they take them to safety, but the pirates said they only had room for women and children. Women and children are more valuable to slavers. So the Goodheart and the Elephant take all the wildling women and children from Hardhome to sell into slavery in lease. Luckily, the Sea Lord of Braavos, Ferrego Antarion, seizes the pirate ships and frees the wildlings, as slavery is forbidden in Braavos. If 2 ships can carry all the women and children from Mother Mole's group of wildlings, it stands to reason that a larger fleet of pirates could capture an entire village 600 years ago. Of course, this explanation doesn't account for the destruction left behind. Even if the pirates set Hardhome ablaze, ash wouldn't rain down from the sky for half a year, and the fires wouldn't be visible from atop the wall. Maybe the Doom of Hardhome is an embellishment for the sake of a good story, a story that has had 600 years to become more and more crazy, with ghouls and demons and raining ash. Or maybe there is another explanation. In 1908, there was a meteor air burst that occurred over Russia. This is referred to as the Tunguska event. A meteor air burst is when a meteor explodes upon entering the Earth's atmosphere. The Tunguska meteoroid was about 60 meters in size. It exploded in the air about 10 kilometers above Siberia. The shockwave of the explosion decimated the land beneath, flattening a 2,150 square kilometer landscape. For reference, that's only about 15% smaller than the land area of Moscow. An indigenous Siberian witness said that trees were falling, the branches were on fire. It became mighty bright, as if there was a second sun. This sounds very similar to how the Doom of Hardhome was described. The Night's Watchman atop the wall thought the sun was rising in the north, like how the Siberian witness thought there was a second sun. Eyewitness reports of Tunguska also mention rocks falling from the air and trees being burned and flattened, like how Hardhome was left with charred trees and ashes raining down. Both Hardhome and Tunguska are in harsh northern climates with coniferous forests. Given that Tunguska was such a mystery during the 20th century, perhaps author George R.R. Martin was inspired by it and applied it to his own story. Reddit user Autark noticed similarities between Hardhome and the site of the KPG asteroid impact that likely killed the dinosaurs, which left a crater near the Gulf of Mexico. This was an asteroid impact, not a meteor air burst, like Tunguska, and it was approximately 15 kilometers wide, vastly larger than Tunguska's 60 meters. The Bay of Hardhome is situated very similarly to the crater left behind by the KPG impact. If the Bay of Hardhome is actually an underwater crater from an asteroid impact, both craters would be located at the northwest corners of their respective peninsulas, protruding into a large gulf, or the Shivering Sea in the case of Hardhome. Those similarities suggest that George Martin may have been inspired by KPG, but there is no mention or hint of a crater at Hardhome. Perhaps it is hidden in the bay, but most likely it was a meteor air burst like Tunguska, not an impact event. If there was an impact, there probably would have been an extinction event as well, but the only ones who went extinct were the wildlings at Hardhome. If there wasn't a meteor air burst, maybe it was a geothermal event, a miniature caldera. A caldera is a volcanic crater often formed by the mouth of a volcano collapsing in on itself. Some calderas are resurgent, meaning their vents can erupt again and again, filling the air with ash and volcanic gases, raining terror on the land nearby. The most famous caldera on Earth is Yellowstone, which has had 3 large eruptions, spaced at an average of 725,000 years apart. If it erupts again, which is unlikely, there would be worldwide climate change effects, and nearby states would be covered by raining ash from the volcano. Yellowstone is a super caldera though. Hardhome would need to have a tiny caldera capable of only producing local effects in a radius of a few dozen miles. But the magma flow and ash raining from the sky, which is what would happen if Yellowstone erupted, does sound like what happened at Hardhome. The north of Westeros has a certain amount of geothermal activity beneath its surface. We learn in Book 1 that Winterfell had been built over natural hot springs, and the scalding waters rush through its walls and chambers like blood through a man's body, driving the chill from the stone halls, filling the glass gardens with a moist warmth, keeping the earth from freezing. Open pools smoked day and night in a dozen small courtyards. In winter, it was the difference between life and death. Jon and Ygritte find a cavern in the Frostfangs containing a sinkhole, and Jon hears the soft rushing sound of an underground stream. They use this underground pool to have a playdate before they climb the wall. So it's certainly possible that a caldera exists within those caves of Hardhome, and it erupted 600 years ago, filling the sky with magma and ash, and flattening and charring all the trees. And the people. When a volcano erupts, and its lava cools off, it leaves glass called obsidian. Perhaps there is obsidian at Hardhome that can be mined and shaped into weapons to be used in the War for the Dawn. So there are all my possibilities for what may have occurred at Hardhome 600 years ago. Now let's briefly discuss Hardhome's role in the upcoming books, The Winds of Winter and A Dream of Spring. Recall that in Book 5, Lord Davos Seaworth is commanded by King Stannis to go to White Harbor to negotiate Lord Wyman Manderly's support. In one of the most badass monologues of the entire series, Lord Manderly tells Davos that he has been plotting the downfall of House Bolton ever since they killed King Robb and his son Wendell at the Red Wedding. Lord Manderly says that the North remembers, Lord Davos. The North remembers, and the Mummers' farce is almost done. He says that he will support King Stannis if Davos will go to the island of Skagos and retrieve Rickon Stark, who was taken there by Osha. Skagos is very close to Hardhome, and some readers believe that Davos will find out about the stranded wildlings. Maybe Davos will help ferry the wildlings from Hardhome down to the Wall. That is, if Lord Manderly gives Davos some of his warships he's been secretly building for a year, or if the Skagosi have ships to use. If Davos can save the wildlings, they may feel indebted to him and offer their swords to Stannis. Davos is probably our only point of view character who has a realistic probability of going to Hardhome, since Jon is dead. By the time Jon's resurrected, it might be too late for him to save the wildlings at Hardhome, so this mission may be in Davos' hands. The other option is Tormund Giantsbane. Jon announces in the Shield Hall that his mission to Hardhome will now be led by Tormund, since Jon now wants to ride south and fight Ramsay. However, Jon was really the only ally and protector to Tormund and all the wildlings at the Wall. The other Night's Watchmen had grown tired of all the wildlings, so they may be in danger with Jon dead. Maybe Tormund does decide to immediately leave Castle Black with his men and save the free folk at Hardhome, as planned, via a land mission, not with ships. Or maybe Tormund sticks around with Val and Melisandre and waits to see how this mutiny plays out. Speaking of Melisandre, she had a vision of Hardhome in Book 5. Snowflakes swirled from a dark sky, and ashes rose to meet them, the gray and the white whirling around each other as flaming arrows arced above a wooden wall, and dead things shambled silent through the cold, beneath a great gray cliff where fires burned inside 100 caves. Then the wind rose, and the white mist came sweeping in, impossibly cold, and one by one, the fires went out. Afterward, only the skulls remained. Melisandre sees the caves burning and being extinguished by a cold, sweeping wind, which sounds a lot like what happens when the others arrive. When White Walkers appear, extreme cold follows them. Perhaps that is the fate awaiting Hardhome in the Winds of Winter. The honest answer is, we have no idea what will happen to Hardhome. It may also never be confirmed what caused its doom 600 years ago, which has left it charred and cursed. Let me know in the comments which theory you like best, or feel free to offer your own. Thanks for watching and subscribing.